This is the You Can Learn Chinese podcast. For everyone who's trying to learn Chinese or reaching for the next level, you came to the right place. I am your host, Jared Turner, and the worst time to have a heart attack is during a game of charades. My co-host is John Passon, and he thinks a lot of conflict in the old Wild West could have been avoided if only 19th century city planners had made their towns big enough for more than one person. Let's get to it. Hey guys, this is Jared Turner joining you here from Utah in the United States.
Hi everybody, I am John Pasden. I am in Shanghai, China. How's it going?
Well, John, the Chinese New Year is here. That always brings a lot of changes and a lot of fun times. I think by the time this airs, you are going to be in the hinterlands of Sichuan, right?
Yeah, going out to the west side of Sichuan, like near Tibet. It's where there's lots of mountains and this time of year, lots of snow and lots of beautiful scenery. Not as many people as out here in Shanghai. So looking forward to it.
Well, I hope you get to go hug a panda or something.
Not sure about that, but hopefully I'll have some good food.
Take a picture. It didn't happen.
All right.
Well, in the news, John, there's a whole lot of interesting things happening, specifically with TikTok. And we're not going to talk so much about TikTok, but we're going to talk about some things that are related to that.
Yeah, we don't want to try to cover the news because, we record this a bit in advance, so we can't stay on top of all the latest developments. But this whole phenomenon of TikTok was going to get shut down and it didn't. But then a whole bunch of these so-called refugees started downloading and using the Chinese app Xiaohongshu, also known as RedNote.
All right, John, I think you mean Little Red Book?
No, RedNote. That's what people are calling it. I don't know who decided on that name, but that's what I'm seeing.
I'm just saying, man, like Xiaohongshu, that literally means Little Red Book.
Yeah, but when I installed the app on my phone, it literally says RedNote right under the icon. And if you look it up,
I'm going to look right now.
Look it up on Wikipedia and stuff. They're saying that RedNote is the English translation.
Fine. You win. It says RedNote. All right. Despite my misgivings, we'll just call it RedNote or Xiaohongshu, right? So, John, I think it'd behoove us to have just a little background on this. The whole thing seems like it's coming full circle, which is kind of funny. So, TikTok actually first started out, in China as Douyin, and it became very popular. And then it came here to the States and branded itself as TikTok. Due to the political situation, the government here in the United States is banning TikTok, which is going to be removing it from all app stores and everything. It's been thrown a lifeline recently by the incoming Trump administration, given another 45-day extension to find some buyer because they're concerned about Chinese ownership of that and what they're going to do with data. But in the meantime, all these people are jumping over to Xiaohongshu or RedNote.
But wait, Jared, you missed an important detail. An important detail is that Douyin always separated the Chinese app from the American or the international app. So the Chinese users, of which there are very many, didn't get to interact much with the international users. However, Xiaohongshu, aka RedNote, it has not been split like that. So all the users are together. Yeah, together in one big noisy town hall.
That's right. So this is an interesting phenomenon where you have all of these Westerners jumping to RedNote. And what are they finding? They're finding a whole big wide world of Chinese social media.
Yeah, it's funny, Jared. I've been, on the internet and in China for quite a while. Like when I first came to China, like Google wasn't blocked, Gmail wasn't blocked. And there actually were days when Chinese people were going on all these international social media apps. But unfortunately, since then, most of these apps have been blocked in China. And so Chinese people use their own Chinese versions. And I don't think there's ever been a case where Americans or other nationalities use the Chinese version of an app like together with the Chinese users. I don't think there's been anything like this for a long time.
Yeah, I think you're right. This is a little bit unique. So, hey, let's give just a little precursor about, what is RedNote? Man, I still want to say Little Red Book or Red Book or something.
So I just signed up for an account recently. Like I always understood it as a Chinese version of Instagram. What's your understanding? You've been using it for longer, right, Jared?
Yeah, I've been using it for not terribly long, maybe 6 months at most. and I don't use it too much, but I do know I have interviewed people for the podcast who do have accounts and have become or are pursuing influencer careers on it. But really, it is very, very similar to TikTok, which is kind of funny why people aren't jumping to Douyin. I think because it's not as easy to get the app. And right now, RedNote is all integrated. But on it, it's very similar to TikTok, where people are going to be posting short form videos and you swipe through those. One feature of RedNote is that there is shopping on it. And I know TikTok has that as well, but it's more prominent in RedNote. They actually have at the very bottom there's a store, things to buy. So, people are influencers or whatever, they can, hawk their wares down there. And of course, there's a social messaging app. So you can message people and you can create groups and so forth. But it also has some, fun features where you can create live rooms of people to interact and to chat. But like I said, it's very similar to TikTok.
I don't know how true this is, but when I first signed up, I was watching some videos and people were talking about how RedNote is different from TikTok. And they were saying things like, people are more polite, they're less political, it's less polarized, they're less impulsive and are argumentative. They claim that the culture is different. I don't know if that's true or not, but I have been hearing that there have been a lot of friendly interactions going on.
Well, I would believe that because in general, Chinese people, especially on social media, are going to be less political. They're going to be a little more, I guess, inclusive, perhaps, less divisive, because I think that's cultural, but also a little bit, the government does regulate certain things, right? So it's not so good to have certain discussions about things that can get moderated.
Oh, you're saying because they're on a Chinese app?
Yes.
Yeah, I hear that. I've definitely seen cases where Chinese users on overseas apps can get a little troll-like, and I agree that it might be less likely on a local app. But also there's just so many users, right? So there's going to be fewer obvious bad apples.
That's right. And it's much easier to get banned on a social media app, right? In China, Chinese social media app. And there's guardrails. There are a lot more guardrails, let's put it that way. Whereas, come out here to the States, it's the Wild West, literally. But what we wanted to do today was talk a little bit about RedNote and how can you use this to learn Chinese.
Yeah, because it is a special opportunity where you can easily download this app, sign up quickly. I did it myself from the US App Store, even though I'm in China. And it's very easy. And yeah, you can just jump right into Chinese conversations pretty quickly if you feel so inclined.
Well, one thing is that if you jump in right now as a native English speaker, you're likely to find a whole bunch of videos in English. And this is something that I've been seeing people griping about in the Chinese language learning sphere. They're griping about this, how there's all these TikTok refugees are now on RedNote and they're clogging up their feed with English videos and they're upset about it because they came there to learn Chinese.
Yeah, when I open the app and I look at the Explore section, I just see a bunch of teenagers or something. They're mostly white. And if I don't go to the nearby tab, it's hard to just find any Chinese content very quickly.
Well, remember, John, you're in China. So if you're finding nearby content, yeah, you're going to find Chinese. If I'm looking for nearby content here in the States, I'm going to see more and more and more English stuff. But anyway, I think that's important to just kind of note is that right now there's going to be a lot of that stuff. So how to cut through that, how to find things that might be interesting to you, and maybe open up the whole world of Chinese social media. Well, the very first thing is simply you can search. So you can search for keywords. Now, you could start with something really basic like, 学中文. So just learn Chinese. And you could also search that in English. And guess what? You're going to pop up a whole bunch of videos of people who want to teach you Chinese.
Yeah, actually, All Set Learning has videos on there too. Hey, so there are plenty. Also, John Gordon, who was a guest on this podcast a while back, he does a lot of videos for his Chinese speaking audience. And he's recently posted to Xiaohongshu some videos in English welcoming his American compatriots who've just come to Xiaohongshu.
So there's going to be a whole lot of content on in fact, there already is a lot of content on there for Chinese language learners, but there's going to be a lot more because teachers who are teaching Chinese are going to see all these TikTok refugees and they're going to start creating content for them. Guarantee it.
All right, but if they're searching, they can search for anything, right? So any Chinese word they know that is something they're interested in, they can just search for that.
That's right. So let's say you're interested in puppetry. Well, how do we say that? 布偶, right? Search it. You'll find something with puppetry. I'm going to do it right now, John.
All right, let us know. We're really in suspense here. Pins and needles.
Okay, so I just searched Buall, and it's not bringing up puppetry, John. It's some cat named Buall.
The grumpy cat.
It's not Grumpy Cat.
But that kind of cat, no?
I think so. Yes, it looks like that type of cat. Well, anyway, the point is that, you can go search anything and you'll, of course, find some sort of video on it. And you might start getting connected or anything you have an interest in. And I think what's really cool, though, about Chinese social media is that it is much more expansive than US media. I mean, I had a friend who was an executive for Dianping, which is kind of like Yelp of China. And I remember once going to one of his, he was speaking at some panel we invited him to when I was there in Shanghai, and just talking about the order of magnitude, how much bigger China is in regards to like content production and like videos and internet, all these things. And it's mind boggling. So whatever TikTok has, in the States there, you're going to find probably 4 to 5 times more content on the Chinese social media.
And I'd say that's especially true for food. So if you're interested in food, search those food terms, whatever kind of food you like, and I'm sure you'll find a ton of that.
So once you do search for something or you find some sort of, interest, you can, of course, follow that person. And as these algorithms do, once you start following someone, it's going to start suggesting other similar content. So, and this is important, right? If you really want to use some like RedNote to learn Chinese, you start finding your interests, start finding something that you want to learn about. And when you start doing that, it's going to be kind of like a flywheel that starts getting moving.
Yeah, so you just have to put in a little bit of time up front, do a few searches, do a little extra scrolling. But once you follow those accounts that you like, it's going to set into motion this virtuous circle. Get it going.
Now, a good thing about all these videos is that virtually everything is captioned now. So it has subtitles. So this is great when you're going into some sort of video. Oftentimes these people are speaking at native speed, so it might be a little difficult for you, but you can pause at different times. You can try to look at the characters, read them if you can, and it can start giving you a little more context, a little more to grip onto and try to understand what might be going on in this video.
Yeah, and remember, if you need to, you can even do screenshots of the videos, and then you'll have, that text and the image, and pretty much all mobile phone operating systems allow you to copy and paste text from images. So, you'll have those that you can look up later if you want, or during the video.
You can also make comments on the video in Chinese. And I tell you, you can choose a username or something. You could try to identify yourself as non-Chinese or whatever, with a picture or your name. But commenting in Chinese is actually a great way to start interacting. And people are they're very welcoming. Especially right now with all these people who are jumping on RedNote, they're kind of excited about it. And they're like, oh, wow, these people want to learn Chinese, or let's welcome them, or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know if the attitudes will ever change. This will have been a while since the phenomenon started, but I think that the goodwill is quite genuine, and I think it will last a while. And so, don't be afraid. Don't be nervous. Just get out there and interact, because so far these interactions seem to be very mutually beneficial. Everyone's really learning a lot and having a good time.
Yeah, and a little tip for this as well. If you're not confident about your Chinese, of course, you can translate it or, use some help or whatever. But you could also just go for it. And at the end, you say, 对不起，我的中文不好, right? And then people are going to be like, oh, no, it's great. And or they might help correct you or whatever.
Yeah, just go for it. So once you find some content that you like, then you can do what I mentioned earlier. You can do screenshots of videos, and then you can copy that text, into your notes, into other files, or you can look in the comments or in the descriptions of the videos, and then you can find other text to copy. And then if you spend a little extra time organizing this stuff, you can get some really good, definitely current and useful vocabulary from these RedNote posts. And as you study this, you might be putting them into flashcards or reviewing them in other ways. If you keep going through, the same feed, which is on the same topic, then you're probably going to keep seeing these words again and again. So it's very self-reinforcing.
Something that also happens in this process is that you're going to start coming across slang, which is kind of cool, actually. Sometimes when you first encounter this, you're like, what is that? You don't understand, is this a name or a noun or something? It doesn't totally make sense, but this is also a great opportunity for you to ask questions. So if you come across some sort of slang word and you find out it is a slang word, maybe even you look it up, you find there's different ways to, discover slang and to find out what it means, but you can also ask for help. So if you do join some groups or you get involved, the different messaging people who are on that app, you can make comments or ask individuals to help you explain and understand what does this slang mean.
Yeah, and remember when you ask a question under a video, it's not always going directly to the creator, the content creator. Other people will likely jump in and answer your questions before the person even sees it. So don't feel too shy about that.
Something I'm already seeing on some of these videos, which I think is great, is that it's about a cultural exchange, is that you can get a lot more cultural context by, watching a lot of these different Chinese videos. It kind of gives you a peek into what life is like for a lot of people in China. It can sometimes dispel misunderstandings and also create more mutual understanding between our two cultures.
Yeah, so one example of that, I actually haven't seen that on Xiaohongshu recently, but I'm just kind of guessing what the kind of things you might see. For example, young people are getting ready to go home to celebrate Chinese New Year, like maybe they work in Shanghai or some other city and they're going back to the countryside. And they kind of dread this because if they have a big family with lots of little kids, they have to give hongbao, like the red envelopes, to all those kids. But they don't actually make a ton of money. So it's a bit of a drain on their finances. I've seen lots of little videos and posts about stuff like that. These kinds of cultural byproducts that you don't really learn about, even though you know what a hongbao is and you know a bit about Chinese New Year customs, you might not have ever thought about this kind of little byproduct. And that's the kind of thing you might see.
Another thing I've seen, there's a number of these videos floating around right now on RedNote, and it's saying don't come to China. It's not safe. Don't go out at night. It's dangerous. There's all this wonderful food to eat, and so you're going to get fat. And then these interesting things to buy, and you're going to spend all your money on, these fun things to do and food to eat. And so you're going to lose all your money. So it's dangerous. Don't come to China. Anyway, it's kind of funny. It's obviously humorous, satirical take on things. But I loved, John, what you did bring up that story, because there are all of these small cultural nuances which we don't really encounter unless, you're kind of in the thick of things sometimes. And so it really kind of pulls back that curtain and you get a little bit deeper insight into the culture.
Another thing you might find is posts related to travel. It wasn't on Xiaohongshu, but actually the reason that my family and I are headed to Western Sichuan for Chinese New Year is because of some videos my wife saw on another platform. So these platforms are quite popular for sharing cool places to visit across China.
And I'm sure once you go there, you're going to be the only ones there, right?
Well, it depends where you go. I think we're not going to some really popular tourist destination, which is one of the reasons why we're going there. But if you look at these videos, you might also see some local small towns and other types of their culture. So you might also get a little dose of the local dialect, which can be quite interesting.
Now, it's kind of a minefield when we start talking about dialects, but I think really for the listener here, you're going to get exposure to some different accents, right?
Yeah, or perhaps something entirely unintelligible to even a native speaker of Mandarin. Yeah, so this word dialect is in quotes. It has other names like Topolect or, Fangyan. But just be aware that that's out there, especially in the videos taking place in little villages in the countryside.
Which sometimes can be just entirely different languages.
Yeah, so just keep that in mind.
Now, when you get on RedNote, you'll also find that there's not everything is a video. There are people who are also posting, just images, and they're posting stories and things like that. So some of these are going to be a little bit harder for an average Chinese learner, but there are things that you can just sit down and read, and you could try to explore a little bit. They're a bit longer posts, but that can be some reading for you, especially if it's in an area of interest of yours.
So another thing you could do is you could challenge yourself to try to create some content. So maybe it's short videos, only has to be 30 seconds long. Give yourself some kind of lower limit, or maybe you're taking photos and writing some text. But if you just challenge yourself to create some content and put it out there, maybe in Chinese, maybe in English with Chinese. I guarantee that at this time in history on Xiaohongshu, you will get some cool interaction that will help motivate you to keep going.
Yeah, and like 2 episodes ago, we were talking about some New Year's resolutions. And that is something you could say, like, I'm going to do something, I'm going to post something in Chinese once a week on RedNote, or maybe every day, or whatever it is that works well for you. Now, something I think that is overlooked commonly is the whole shopping aspect.
Can Americans buy stuff on Xiaohongshu?
I don't really know. I think you probably won't be able to. I don't know. I think you need to have, like Chinese bank account and RMB and stuff. Anyway, but the point behind shopping, and this is something that I've found very helpful over the years, is that when you see a picture of something, the description of that item that you want to buy is likely has that item in the description. So sometimes you might be saying, like, you come across something, oh, I've always wanted to know how to say that, or like, oh, what is that called? When you find some sort of product that's being sold on the shopping section, you can oftentimes extract that text, or if you can read it, that's great. And you can identify, that's what that's called. And John, sometimes I've done this and I found out, I was using the wrong word. Or, this very specific item is maybe in generally uses this word, but this specific one has this specific name for it. So if you are interested in, figuring out some of that stuff, that can be a great avenue to do so.
Yeah. And for all of this, it's probably going to help if you have a Chinese friend or a Chinese teacher that you can check with, because there will be some cases when it's hard to know for sure. But don't let that stop you. Get out there and look at stuff, and you can learn a lot just by observing and exploring. So I know that it is possible that Xiaohongshu could become divided between the Chinese version and the international version. So I think it's a special time now when there's lots of international communication that can go on. And I've learned a few things myself from everything that's going on. And that is that Chinese people are still very curious about Americans, all countries, but because this is an American thing mostly, they're very curious about Americans. And Americans are still very curious about the Chinese. And there really is a lot of goodwill on both sides. That can be easy to forget, with politics being what they are. But this has been a really good reminder, and that there are also not as many opportunities for us to mingle online as you might think. You think that there's so many opportunities to just, communicate with people online, but not so many at this scale. So I think a little Chinese goes a long way, and it really does help to motivate you to keep learning.
I share similar sentiments on this, John, and I hope that this is really an opportunity to create more bridges between our cultures. And I know we have a lot of listeners from all over the world, not just here from the States, but if you think about it, sometimes we don't even know much about the next big city that's near ours, or maybe we just visited, or maybe we haven't. We don't know a lot of things about even the places in our own countries. And so this is a wonderful opportunity for us to gain those insights, build more cultural understanding. And I think recognize, John, that, we're all human beings on this rock floating through space. And it's only these cultural things. We have things that divide us, but I think there's a lot more that unites us.
There totally is. And if, late January, early February, you already feel like you're starting to fall behind on your New Year's resolution to learn more Chinese, well, suddenly a new opportunity presents itself. So go for it.
Because, John, even TikTok refugees can learn Chinese.
And you can, and you will learn Chinese in 2025.
You have been listening to the You Can Learn Chinese podcast. My name is Jared Turner, co-founder of the Mandarin Companion Graded Reader Series. My co-host is John Pazin, co-founder of Mandarin Companion, founder of All Set Learning, the Chinese Grammar Wiki, and Sinosplice.com. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share it with a friend. It helps us reach more Chinese learners like you. You can also leave us a review on iTunes or connect with us at mandarincompanion.com. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. If you've got a story to share, we'd love to hear it. Visit our website to apply for a chance to be featured on this podcast. Looking for a fun way to level up your Chinese? Check out Mandarin Companion Graded Readers on Amazon, iBooks, Google Play, or wherever you get your books. Apologies to John Cena, we just ran out of time. You Can Learn Chinese podcast is produced by myself, Jared Turner, and then edited by Jasper Chua. And of course, thanks to my co-host, the man, the myth, the legend, John Paston. See you next time.